We are live. Welcome to today's power session. Excited to be with you today. Thanks so much for joining us, watching the replay, or hopping on here live momentarily. We're excited to dive into some principles about your habits, your patterns of thinking. That's what we do here at Habit Finder. We want to be able to not necessarily teach you how to think the way we think, but help you stop thinking the way you think, at least in the terms of what's holding you back, in terms of what might be preventing you from realizing more of your potential, from stepping more into your leadership, creating more of your dreams. It all comes down to one thing, and that is your brain, your habits of thinking, your thought patterns, and how those are aligning or sabotaging what you want to be able to create in your life. It's been a while since I've broken out the old whiteboard. For those of you that have been following me for a while, this was kind of my home. This is where all the best stuff came from my whiteboard, not from me. And so hoping to resurrect that today to give you some simple principles to be able to work through, to be able to get unstuck, to be able to get more traction in what you're doing. This is something that I hear more often than just about anything when I travel around, when I do panels, Q&As, speeches. People want to know, how do I get unstuck? There's always one or two people in the audience that are brave enough, vulnerable enough to share that. And then you can just see this exhale from so many other people of, yes, please help me get unstuck. So many of us are walking around trying to impress, trying to pretend, succumbing to and surrendering to fear and shame. And all of these things can compound and get us stuck. And many of us, as we talk about, it's actually measured in the Habit Finder under a thinking pattern we call coachable, that we're seeing move to the right more and more in a lot of people's habit finders this year. You don't have to have this to suffer from this challenge, but it's a great indicator that it might be. The way we put it is that many people have had a shtick for when they get stuck. But the challenge is in 2020, there's a lot of shticks that aren't getting people unstuck. And a lot of people that what they used to be able to do to kind of cope or to justify or to get through things aren't working anymore. So that's the good news. That's also the challenge if you don't know what to do about it. So today I hope to give you just a couple of things, because the one thing that is true across the board of getting unstuck is it's got to be simple. Because oftentimes when we're stuck, we can be stuck in this pain cycle where we're responding more to pain in our life than being able to go to possibility, to be able to see our dreams and what's possible. We're getting overwhelmed by the pain of what we're doing or the pain of what we're not doing. And so hopefully giving you a very simple jump start today to be able to work through that. But let's go ahead and dive in and get started. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Habit Finder Power Session for this week. I'm your host, Paul Blanchard, president of Habit Finder. Excited to be with you today. I have broken out the old trusty whiteboard. It's been a while. We've missed her. Okay, we're excited to be back to be able to share a couple simple principles to be able to help you get unstuck, to help you get traction. If you're spinning your wheels, okay, if you're feeling like life is just happening to you, then I hope to give you some really simple places to look. But I want to cover a couple of things first. One, it is not going to be easy to get out of where you are. If you feel stuck, if you feel like you're spinning your wheels, your brain immediately goes into exit mode, escape mode, which are all things that it looks for in terms of trying to make your life easier, trying to just get through it, hoping that when you get to the other side of it, it's somehow going to look different. But if any of you are hunkered down in a storm right now in your life, one of the most challenging things you can do is come out of that storm and look around and be expecting to be in a different place. Sometimes we do just need to get through life. I addressed that a few power sessions ago and giving you some questions to consider, giving you some points of reference to be able to determine whether you're actually in a getting through it mode or you're in a getting better mode. Today, we're going to be talking about, well, if you have totally realized that you are just getting through and now you're not getting anywhere, I want to give you some tips. And if you're a leader, if you're building a business, a volunteer army, then you understanding how to be able to help other people with this is super important. So today we are simply talking about what happens when we're stuck, when we're spinning our wheels, when we're having challenges. For sake of simplicity, like I said before we started this power session, simplicity is key, okay? Your brain that is constantly either supporting you or sabotaging you, and sometimes both at the same time, creating this massive tug of war. Okay, we want to understand the way that it's wired, the things that it can challenge in us, but it always is going to grab onto one thing to improve, and that is simplicity. It uses complexity to stay the same. The more complex something becomes, the more justified we feel in being able to reject it, or why we couldn't do it, or the confusion that we create in not being able to start where we are and feeling like we don't know where to start. Your brain loves complexity because then it makes hard things seem hard. And when things are hard, we can feel justified in why we didn't do them and why we procrastinated them. So one thing we want to break down today in terms of being stuck is that the number one cause is life feels hard. Now, for simple definitions, again, we want to maintain the simplicity. Hard is easily defined, okay, as this. Something changed and you did not. That's it. That's what hard is. When something feels hard in your life, it's because something changed in what you were doing, how you were doing it, how you were thinking about doing it, in your environment, in the results that it gave or that it created, or the lack of consistency in the result. Something changed and you did not. That's what creates hard things in our lives. And the more we try to press forward, the more we try to just do it. Sorry, Nike, great company. I love their stuff, but I would not hire them as a life coach, as a performance coach, because just do it is just going to frustrate the process of not figuring out what changed and what changes now are required of you. Thus, again, the key to why this needs to be simple. Because if we feel like a lot of things changed and we need to change a lot of things about us, the likelihood that we will continue to sabotage ourselves, continue to feel stuck, increases significantly. But hopefully now, as far as just a simple premise, my life is hard because, and if you can't answer it simply, then you're playing into the game of your life just wanting to justify procrastination, justify playing small, justify keeping your life predictable. Because when we're stuck, when we're procrastinating, when we're spinning our wheels, it's not because of the hard things. It's because of the easy things. Because we made simple things complex, because little things changed and we didn't pay attention to them, so they became bigger, more complex things. Then we start frustrating ourselves. We start, yes, Amy, we get overwhelmed in terms of the lack of simplicity. And then it becomes easy to say, I couldn't do that because it was hard. But what really keeps us stuck long term is not doing the easy things. That's far more hard than doing the hard things. A lot of you, in fact, have probably continued to do the hard things. It's hard to continue to get up in the morning when you feel like you're spinning your wheels and going in circles and not going anywhere. It's hard to show up and make the meals for your kids rather than take the easy way out. It's hard to do a lot of things that when you have to do them and they are hard to do, you acknowledge and you still have some sense of accomplishment because they're hard. But what keeps us stuck is the easy things that would actually progress us, the easy things that would actually take us to the next level. So for those of you feeling stuck, first, hard, if you're feeling like life is hard, it's because something changed, usually little things, and we did not. So we want to put ourselves in a position to discover what those things are. I'll give you some guidelines for that today to be able to help you break that down as simple as possible. But also understand that what's continuing to keep you stuck, now that something little changed and you did not, is we're getting over-focused on the easy things we're not doing. Okay? Because the hard things we're doing, we have to do. We should do. We're supposed to do. And so all of our energy gets sucked into the hard things And we don't have any energy left for the easy things. And so we spend the rest of the day beating ourselves up and carrying emotional debt into the next day because we couldn't do the easiest things. And the hard things didn't feel like anything special because we were supposed to do them. We had to do them. Something's got to give. And we're going to want to get back to the basics of being able to understand where this original pivot may have occurred. And that's going to require us to increase our consciousness. That's going to require us to simplify our lives. So let me give you some steps for simplification to be able to get unstuck, to be able to help other people get unstuck, to be able to create momentum in your life. There are 3 areas that I always ask every client to look at first. Number 1, your morning. Your morning is a blueprint for the rest of your day. Okay? It is a microcosm of how you're approaching everything else. If you wake up in the morning and your day takes over you immediately, then that's how your life is playing out. If you wake up in the morning and you jump right into looking at your phone, you're probably playing into that browsing mentality. You're probably not totally surrendered and given up, not totally just being washed around to whatever life wants to do for you, but you're hoping for something to save you, hoping for something to come out and grab you. We talked about that browsing mindset in our last power session, or the one just before that, okay? So your morning is an incredible place to get simple about your life. What about your current mornings could you learn about what's changed in your environment, what's changed in your life where you have not? Has the time you've had to get up in the morning changed? Has it laxed? Maybe many of you had a little bit more structure and then quarantine and shutdown. Well, I don't need to get up early to get my kids to school anymore, so I'll just sleep in a little bit later, and then I have to get up to feed them breakfast because they won't leave me alone. But still, it's the same thing. It's still waking up and allowing your day to take over you. Mornings are one of the first places I look with anyone, no matter what is going on in their life, if it's not in alignment with what they want to create. Morning is when we've got the greatest capacity to be able to paint something on the canvas of our day, of our life, of our mind, before it gets compounded and cluttered with all kinds of other noise. So I would ask you to consider, how are your mornings? What do your mornings look like? Are they simple? Are they open? Are they experimental? Are you curious about your mornings? Are they intentional? Some of the things you want to consider about how your morning is going. And if any of you are using reasons like, well, I'm not a morning person, that's fine. There's no such thing as a morning person. There's just an opportunity to be able to dive in a little bit deeper into understanding what you want to experience in the mornings that could play out for the rest of the day for your life. Now, I believe that your mornings should start early, but early is different for everybody. My early is 4:30, 5 a.m. on any given morning. But that doesn't mean that yours needs to be 4:30 or 5 a.m. Your early could be something totally different. Some people's early is 10 a.m. They have things going on at night and whatever else to be able to do that. The other thing to consider, thank you, Kitty, because you nailed it, is, are your mornings too structured? Do your mornings restrict you from being able to experience new things? Now, I'm not saying that Kitty is trapped in her mornings, that she is trapped in her structure, but that's something to consider. Because if you're going, well, my mornings are awesome, but the rest of my day and my life is not great, I still feel stuck. Well, then it might be time to change what happens in the morning. It might be time to be able to create a different kind of experience, a different kind of stimulation. Now, that doesn't mean you need to do something totally different, but you're definitely going to want to look at what you're doing differently to be able to create that. So many wonderful things. We could do a whole power session just on your mornings. Some of the challenges I see, I just got to call it out, is there are a lot of people trying to have what I would call a miraculous morning, as it's been called in a particular piece of literature. That's a great thing to go through to get ideas of what to do. But the people that I work with that find fulfillment and growth and challenging themselves really appreciate what's in that particular structure of a morning that is miraculous, we'll call it, but are not confined by that. It does not become the standard of their success. It becomes a great place to look. Whereas if they were doing that for a time and got great results, and then they weren't getting great results anymore, they could look back to that and see what they might have let slip. But it doesn't mean that's how their mornings had to look every single morning, because we want to keep it simple. Do you start your morning with you, or do you start your morning with your phone? Do you start your morning with you, or do you start your morning with a shower, which usually means you're getting ready, which usually means your day's getting ready to take over you? Do you start your morning with you? And do you start it early? And do you start it intentional? Do you start it early? Do you start it with you? Do you start it intentional? These are the things we want to consider with our mornings. It's one of the greatest places to look at if we're feeling stuck. That's not to say that some people aren't using this as a sanctuary for everything else. I've seen a lot of people spend their powder on their morning. They have this incredibly structured, amazing experience, and they have nothing left through the rest of the day. Well, pay attention to that too, because we can get trapped by our tools, even the good ones. I'll say that again because it's critical. We can get trapped by our tools, even the good ones. So pay close attention. It's not just the things that you might perceive as bad that could be holding you back, but a morning is a great place to look at that. Okay? Number 2 is your most important objective. How clear are you about your most important objective? Okay? Your most important objective. Simply put, when you wake up in the morning and you ask yourself, what is my most important objective today? How clear are you about what that is? Do you write it down? Do you actually have this conversation with yourself? This alone can be incredibly helpful in getting unstuck and getting traction with spinning wheels. Because so many of us are waking up every morning trying to do too much. We'll get into that more in just a second. Once I give you the third one, I'll give you a couple of things to watch out for as you're looking through these things. A couple of things that can prevent you from being able to get unstuck or to grow or to get traction, no matter how well you're doing the 3 things that I'm talking about. But simply ask yourself, today, when you woke up this morning, were you clear on what your most important objective was? I was. And the more clear I am about the one single most important objective is, the better my day goes, and the better I can end my day, and the better my next day will be. It's when I have too many most important objectives, which is contradictory. There's only one most important objective, that my day starts to compound into a tough week, into a tough month, unmet expectations, feeling stuck, start sacrificing some of the important parts of my morning, so on and so on. Okay? So number 2 is your most important objective. Get clear about it. And also get clear about not having so much judgment about what it could be. Because sometimes my most important objective is just to survive the day and survive it as well as I can so that it doesn't eat into the next day. Well, that may not sound like the most progressive, powerful, empowering kind of perspective, but there are days that's what it is. So as you consider your most important objective, consider it daily. Don't decide what your most important objective is daily on a weekly or monthly basis. Because you might run into a day where if you said, man, every day I'm going to make 5 calls, I'm going to do 3 Facebook posts, I'm going to do 10 stories, I'm going to watch an hour of training every day, and I will succeed. Well, you make an ultimatum like that, the first day that you don't do that, you're done for. You might be able to drag into the next day and try and compensate and make up for what you didn't do the day before, but that's the beginning of the end. Now, if I know that if I do that on average, on a daily basis, I'll get what I want when I want, well, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start waking up every morning. I'm going to say, what's the most important objective today? Meaning, what is a victory today? And believe it and own it. And I may not be able to make that many calls, do those many things every day, but I know that's the ideal. And if what I am allowing to be a victory for today is not going to total up into getting that in that time frame, I either need to change the time frame or change the outcome I'm seeking altogether. So keep this in mind. Simply put, what's the most important objective today? And it's okay if it's not totally progressive and amazing. Sometimes getting through the day and being able to have a better chance at the next day is the right thing to do. Sometimes. Not over and over and over again, but so many of us aren't even allowing ourselves to have an intentionally okay day, yet we turn out to have okay days more often than not and just beat ourselves up about it, hold unfair expectations against ourselves, and we're never able to create momentum. So to do that, take a look at your morning, and in that morning, are you getting clear and actually writing down what your most important objective is that day, and is it simple? Doesn't mean it's the only thing you're going to do, but at the end of the day, if you did this, you're going to feel awesome. Number three is your evening. How are you ending the day? How many of you have ever thought about that? How are you ending the day? Because most people are ending the day super grateful that that day is over. Too many people are going to bed every night and falling asleep. I would rather go to bed and choose to go to sleep. I would rather be considering the things I'm looking forward to the next day. I'd rather be considering how I've treated my body and what I've fed it to be prepared for a great day the next day. I'd rather be able to have an intentional close to the day. I know that when I'm on point, that when I'm growing, when I'm getting better, I start my day intentionally. I have one most important objective to stand out amongst all the chaos and the craziness, lack of organization, whatever else I could pick on myself for throughout the day. And then I end my day intentionally. I've been able to create some pretty amazing, significant things for myself and for my clients with just those three things. Whereas so many people are spending so much time beating the crap out of themselves as to what happens in between these things, rather than starting intentionally, ending intentionally, and just finding one thing that will qualify as a win for that day, as a victory for that day. You're still going to do the things you have to do. You're still going to do the things that are life or death. You're still going to do the things that are more reactive. But you're going to be able to notch up just 1%, just a little bit more to get perpetually better. And you're going to be able to start creating a life that becomes inevitable rather than is expected. And a life that is expected is not fulfilling. It's not fun. You were supposed to do it anyway. Okay? So this kind of simplicity is key. How's your morning? What's your most important objective? And how are you ending your day? Does it start intentionally? Does it end intentionally? You can have a crazy, even a crappy day, some people might call it. But if you can end it intentionally, you get an opportunity to wake up the next morning and actually own this. Actually own today. I begin to not own this book. If you don't, I would highly recommend it. But actually own this phrase. Today, I begin a new life. That's the secret of learning. Those are the first words in the 10 scrolls and the greatest sales in the world. Today, I begin a new life. It's very difficult to begin a new life if you're not ending the previous day, the previous life intentionally. Because if you don't close your accounts that evening, you're going to carry that emotional debt into the next day, which will make it really difficult to start your next morning, which will make it really hard to be clear about the most important objective. But Paul, there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things that are the most important. No, there's only one most important. It's just not the only thing you're going to do, but it's the only thing you're going to evaluate at the end of your day as to whether the day was a success. And finding that kind of simplicity can actually start to give us traction, can actually start to get us unstuck. Because beyond that, it's just going to be patience in this simplicity. Let me give you a couple of things to keep an eye on. If you start to go into this simplicity of your morning, your most important objective, and your evening, and if you're still stuck, you're still having challenges, here's 3 things I want you to look at. Number 1, you're doing too much. The number 1 cause of doing too little in life is trying to do too much. So I would say just do less, but it's not that easy. you'll say, okay, brain, let's just do less. It'll be like, sure. But then you'll really start to go and really start to jump into that, and it'll get harder and harder and harder. Okay. Great question. Kitty asks, how do you pick the most important? That just depends on what you want. What do you want? What do you desire? What do you really want to accomplish? I'll get to that in just a second. So we're going to diagnose that in just a moment. So number one is doing too much. I don't care how intentional your morning is, how clear you are on your most important objective, and how intentionally you end your day. If you're trying to do too much, your brain will frustrate the process. Your brain does not respond well to change, let alone a lot of it. And I mean change in terms of the expectations you're setting on it, not what's happening environmentally. That's a lack of perspective to believe that it's what is outside of you is what drives you or determines your fate or whatever it is. That's internal. It's mathematically proven. It's internal to you. But if you're doing too much, it's going to be very difficult to connect with that. It's going to be really hard to work through this. So it's not just stop doing so much, do less. You've got to have an exercise. You've got to have something to represent that, to help you work through that. The solution I provided in the past is make your to-do list of what you want to accomplish today. And then I want you to prioritize it and cut it in half. Then after you've cut it in half, I want you to reprioritize it. And then I want you to cut it in half one more time. And I want you to get really good at getting 25% of your to-do list done every day for at least a week. And then add 10% of it back. And get really good at that for a week. And then add 10% of it back. And the people that fight me on this, when we really dig into, it may not be what they actually wrote down, but it's what they were expecting themselves to accomplish that day. And we get down to it, most of them are not even accomplishing 25% of it. In fact, we found the number is usually around 20%. We spend the rest of the time thinking about what we didn't get done, thinking about what we still have to do, and compounding so on and so on and so on. So literally, write down what you want to get done tomorrow, prioritize it, cut it in half, prioritize it again, and cut it in half one more time, and get really good at that. Some of you might not need that much of a tweak because you're not that stuck. So maybe make your to-do list, prioritize it, and just cut it in half once. Get 50% of it done. But if you find yourself having a hard time being able to get a good batting average with 50% of your to-do list every day, you're doing too much. Number two, this comes into what you were asking about, Kitty, is you're not clear on your real desires. Our desires are our compass, our guide. They're where we find our instruction, our inspiration for how to get where we want to go. But the challenge is most of us are not pursuing our true desires. We're being frustrated by them. So, for example, I desire to really help transform people's lives. But I also really desire to want to impress them. I really desire to not offend them. I really desire to not have them look at me like I'm part of one of those things. I really desire to play it safe. But I also desire to transform people's lives. Well, guess which one's going to overcome the other? All those intricate little desires between here and there that frustrate the process of doing what we actually want to do. The simplest way I've been able to put that over the last few years is you cannot inspire people and try not to offend them at the same time. So if you have a deep desire of not wanting to offend people, but you have a desire of inspiring people, one is going to work against the other. At the very least, it's going to stalemate. So let's get clear about our desires. If we have something we truly desire, then we should be able to find simple steps to acquire it and be able to, with passion-driven tasks, be able to consistently do the work to get there. If we did the work for a while, but then we stopped, we may have shifted desires without realizing it. So how do we determine what the most important objective is? That completely depends on your desire. But understand that creating that, Kitty, is like a Rubik's Cube. It's not just, oh, there's orange on this side and I need to get it on that side, so turn it. Well, when we turn it, we shifted a whole bunch of other stuff to different sides. Sometimes we have to go backwards to go forward. Sometimes we have to go sideways to go backwards to go forwards. So experimentation is key. But we do know this. The number one challenge to your self-worth, which then becomes the number one challenge to you getting unstuck and growing, is unmet expectations. So rather than an expectation, you'll want to have experimentation. So Kitty, test it out. If you say, this is the most important objective today, the most important objective today is to get my laundry done because I'm going to feel amazing that it's done. Or my most important objective today is to call so-and-so because I've been putting them off. Or my most important objective today is to just totally be present and not have any objectives today. You start experimenting and find out what allows you to end your day more intentionally and what helps you make more progress in aggregate. What I mean by aggregate is you're not here today and then you've got where you want to be tomorrow. And I mean tomorrow in the abstract, meaning a year from now or whatever. And you don't go, okay, I need to do this much today. Then I need to do this much today. Then I need to do this much the next day, this much the next day, this much the next day, this much the next day to eventually get to where I want to be. It doesn't work that way. We are not linear. Okay? We don't just naturally progress that way. The way it actually looks to get there is that today might be this much, today might be this much, this day might be this much, this day might be this much, this one might be this much, then we run into a little bit of a lull, but we allow ourselves to get through it, and so we make this comeback, and then we have another one of these days, and then we hit it. That's really what it looks like. But the challenge is we don't give ourselves permission to have these days because they all needed to match this one up to this point. And all of these needed to match this one up to this point. And all of these needed to match this one up to this point. And so we beat the crap out of ourselves along the way. When really, this is what it looks like. And it's because we gave ourselves permission for this day that this day could even happen. But imagine if we beat ourselves up for this day. This day doesn't happen and we don't reach it. Or any of these days in this day, or any of these days in this day. So experimentation, giving yourself permission. We want to drive our business. We want to drive our dreams, drive our lives. Well, the drive requires both a gas and a brake. So, Kitty, without a long, extended coaching session, it'd be hard for me to consciously feel good about telling you what your most important objective should be today, other than just giving you the opportunity to let go of some judgment, let go of some expectations so you can start experimenting with what it could be. Some days it'll be counterintuitive. Some days it'll be totally clear. I wish it wasn't that complicated, but that's why I think one of the most powerful principles of success is stop trying to figure everything out and just enjoy the figuring. Enjoy the curiosity. Enjoy the experimentation. And just be able to step up just a little bit more each day. Number 3, and the last one for today, and this one's really underestimated, is close the loops. So let's say, okay, Paul, I'll take on this challenge. I'm going to start my day just a little bit more intentional. I'm going to look for that most important objective, not because it's the only thing I'm going to do that day, but it's the only thing I'm going to use to evaluate whether it was a victory or not, okay? And I'm going to end my day more intentionally. I'm going to check to make sure I'm not doing too much. I'm going to challenge my assumptions that what I want is what I really want. If you're still stuck, and this might be a place to start for some of you, you may have some loops that need to be closed. See, the human brain is really good at keeping track of, or as I've heard it put in a book I read called The Body Keeps the Score. The human brain is really good at keeping score. If I tell someone I'm going to do something, or I even imply it and I don't do it, I create an unconscious and oftentimes emotional deficit. But I may not realize that it's there until it's resolved. And have you ever had this? Had something simple that you were putting off, something little that you hadn't gotten done, and then you got it done and it felt like the weight of the world fell off your shoulders? Why do we continue to have these experiences and yet play down the opportunity to close a few loops to have some incredible experiences? I had a client who in one of our groups, had a college admissions letter for her son that she just needed to sign, put in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and send it off. And during a power session we were having in the middle of the group, taking 10 minutes to just be totally present and get as much productive work done as possible, she decided to get that done. It had been sitting on the corner of her desk for 3 weeks. And as soon as she closed that loop, you would have thought that she had paid off her mortgage. You would have thought that she was finally debt-free, that she had won the sweepstakes. It felt that good. So if you're still stuck, and again, some of you might start here, take inventory with your intentional morning you're now going to have or continue to have, and ask yourself, are there any commitments I made that I haven't followed through on? Is it implied, explicit, anything in between? Anything I said I would do, anything I implied I would do, any commitment I made to others or myself that I haven't followed through on, and then go do it. Elisa, great. Voter registration. You go do that right now, Elisa, and just watch. Oh, okay. Because it's not about the voter registration. That's super important. Super important that you do that. Okay, we could have a whole conversation around that kind of responsibility and being a part of this incredible country and whatever else. But what I'm talking about is simply closing the loop and how beneficial that is. How many holes in the gas tank did we create with commitments we implied or actually made that we haven't followed through on with ourselves or with others that we're putting off because we were in damage control, we were in triage, and it seems so easy to put those off. Again, remember, it's not the hard things that are hardest to do. It's the easiest things that are hard to do. So let's find some loops to close. Those are 3 of the blind spots I want you to look at in addition to simplifying your day with how you start your morning, your most important objective, and the finishing your day more intentional. I hope this gives you an opportunity to kind of step back and simplify where you're at, to be able to get down to what might be actually holding you back in terms of judgment and procrastination and unmet expectations and all these other things. All the things that when we find them, it's like, oh, duh, why didn't I find that sooner? Because we were making our life way too complicated. Because that's what continued to feed the part of the brain that didn't want to grow, that didn't want things to be different, that didn't want to have to learn new habits. Just because you think you want that doesn't mean that's what your brain's willing to support you on. So use the framework of an intentional morning, your most important objective, an intentional evening, and considering some of these blind spots to help gain some traction, to be able to grow, to be able to get what you want. Okay? And as you start to find that momentum and you're ready to shift gears and take it even further, let us know we're ready to run alongside you, whether in our group coaching, in our shift program, in our one-on-one coaching, to be able to dive even deeper into these principles to fine-tune that performance even more. Okay? Super welcome, Elisa. Super welcome, Kitty. Everybody else. Thank you, Jody. Thanks for being on here, everybody. Those of you watching this replay, those of you watching this live, thank you so much for your time. Keep things simple. Og wrote it in his book, The Greatest Secret in the World. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Let us do that. Let us do it with an invitation to be curious and experiment and watch what starts to happen in your life in aggregate, not the expectation of yesterday trying to be made up for today. Okay, take care, everybody. Have an awesome day. We'll see you next time.